Hey everyone, hope you're doing well out there. In this episode, I spoke to Fadlan Sheikh. He's a pharmacy school student, artist, producer, and MF Doom enthusiast. We spoke about old tech, music software, philosophy, and what it's like being a student in his field. I would like to thank each and every one of you for helping me get to 10 episodes. This would not be possible without any of your support. With that being said, here's Fadlan. Fadlan,
Oh, yes.
thank you so much for being here, man.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So you're a rapper, producer, artist, MF Doom enthusiast, and
yeah.
student currently enrolled in pharmacy school. Thank you so much for being here. I
Yeah, no
appreciate it.
problem. No problem, man.
So let's talk about how we met briefly. It was at Magbar Fest.
It was Magbar Fest. My
Yeah.
friend and I, we went to go see Y-Doms.
Yeah.
They put on such a good show.
Yeah.
even lie.
Bungalow Betty headlined that night, and
Yes.
they murdered it. It was
Oh,
so
yeah.
good.
That
They killed it. It was so
It
awesome.
was such a nice night. I think me and my buddy, we stepped out. We went to grab like a slice of pizza over at the pizza place next door.
Yeah, pizza
And,
Donzi, Donisi.
Donisi, yeah. It was nice. It was good pizza. And we caught you and the guitarist John Moriarty. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we caught you guys outside, and we just sat down and just chatted for a minute.
Yeah, I absolutely loved talking with you. It just ended up like being like an hour or something. It felt like
I lost track of time.
Yeah, I
if I'm
did
being
too.
honest.
So I immediately, I enjoyed speaking with you and was, immediately charmed. And so
I
I
get that a lot.
I definitely immediately came to mind thinking that I wanted to share your positive energy with everyone listening in. and the
Wow,
audience.
that means a lot to me, actually. Thank you.
Yeah. So you definitely shared it with me, and so I definitely want to just impart that gift onto others as well. Just let them get to know you.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for putting me on your platform.
Of course.
Honestly, I did a lot of things have like happened with me over the year, music wise, that I just never thought that I'd see in like so long. I've made music since I was like 16. Me and my homeboy that you met, we went to the same high school and we sat at the same chemistry table, and
Oh wow.
we just made like really crappy songs, and I never really thought I'd have the opportunity to take it as seriously as I am now. Just being able to share my music with people, and I don't know, it's simultaneously like really cool, but I'm going into like new foreign territory, like with all this stuff. I'm meeting people, I'm going to places I never thought I would. It's really exciting.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. So I'm curious about what got you started in producing music, and of course, need to know what those early influences are. I know MF Doom is one of those.
Oh, definitely. I love
but
Doom.
your production style is so unique. It's sample heavy.
Oh, yeah.
You do, high pass filter on the vocals. It has a very unique sound. And so I know when I put on one of your tracks, it's you, and it kind of has this unique footprint. So I'm curious of what influenced that starting off.
First of all, I want to say thank you for being able to see that and being able to appreciate that, because I feel like I've been tinkering away for a long time with being able to like hone into my sound. It didn't come like off the bat or anything like that. I actually started out, I just wanted to rap, man. So I love poetry. I was really good at poetry, like back in like high school and stuff. And I used to be part of a duo with this guy. He was the producer. He had a lot of JPEG Mafia influence, and me. I just wanted to write, man. My biggest inspirations. I'm not sure if you're familiar. It's this duo named Arm & Hammer, with Billy Woods and Elucid. If you don't know them, you should check them out. They make amazing music. It's a little unorthodox, I will say, and their production choices and styles are very different than what you might see in like a mainstream kind of thing. But I love Billy Woods' style. He doesn't have a very like orthodox flow. He has more of like a spoken wordy type thing, where he kind of, instead of like being on the beat, being on the bam, 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 he like kind of flows around it. where it still makes sense and it still sounds amazing, but it's not just what you're used to. The other thing that I love about Billy Woods is he takes a lot of political and psychological influence. By that I mean he makes really niche references, like the type where I go on Genius, I look at his lyrics, and I'm just so enamored by the stuff that he mentions. So on his, I think 2022 album, Ethiops, the cover is like this Rembrandt painting. It's so cool. The very first line is, I think Mengistu Haile Mariam is my neighbor. And just that line is just crazy, and it goes into this wild story. And all in all, I'm just an appreciator of amazing writing and good writing. So even to this day, when I make music for myself, when I just make music, period, I'm always looking at the stuff that I'm writing, and I'm seeing, like, is this up to par with like what I'm used to out of myself? So I'm a heavy critic on my own writing. But eventually that duo with me and that one guy, we kind of fizzled out. And I knew I still wanted to take my music seriously. I knew that this is something that I want to be doing for the rest of my life. This is kind of my calling. So I slowly took up FL Studio. I bought the full version. I did not pirate it. I swear I didn't. And slowly, by means of trial and error, by means of utilizing YouTube University and just analyzing the production techniques of just amazing producers like Madlib and Jay Dilla and The Alchemist. Alchemist is one of my favorites. He's been on a crazy run. I've incorporated all that to just kind of mold into what I release. And like you said, I'm very sample heavy. Like Nicholas Craven says, no sample snitching.
Yeah.
No sample snitching. Please, I do not want to get in a lot of trouble. Yeah. But yeah, I'll sample anything. I'm like JPEG Mafia like that. I'll sample a TikTok. I'll sample an Instagram reel. I'll like go out on the street and just take my voice memos on my phone, hold it into the air, and then just see the ambiance of the place and just take all that in. I might put that somewhere. One time for one of my songs, I asked my old boss to send me like just audio of her like washing the dishes or something, and I put that in a track. Yeah, I'll do anything.
That's
man.
awesome.
Like I love somebody once described it as like sound manipulation, where you can just take any sound, anything that makes a sound, any percussive element, woodwind, whatever, you can like just do what you can to it. You can pitch it up, pitch it down, stretch it out, put a bunch of saturation on it, and just make it sound like the craziest thing known to mankind.
Yeah,
And that is like a lot of my thought process when I go into producing. Also, I want it to be able to fit to me. The thing that I found when I was only rapping, is that I would have to try to find beats, on like YouTube or whatever. And a lot of the times, like, yeah, they were good beats. They were very polished and everything. But then maybe at the time, I didn't want something with such heavy drums. Maybe at the time, I didn't want something that was so polished. So being able to take it all in my own hands, have full creative control of all that, has done wonders for me and has definitely influenced what I want out of my music and out of the music that I consume.
Yeah.
I hope that answered your question.
Of course. Yeah. So I'm so, inspired by how you're able to take time for that and also be, in pharmacy school at the same time, which I know is pretty rigorous.
Oh, believe me, my classmates can't believe it either.
Yeah.
I passed out my mixtape the first day to everybody in there, like, how do you have the time to do this?
Right.
And I'm just like...
You make time for the things you love.
I make time for the things I love. And don't get me wrong, like, I do still take my education seriously. I'm paying a lot of money to go to this place. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I believe that you need to have a balance.
Yeah.
In that... Hey, I have to spend X amount of hours a week at this place that I might like. It's kind of whatever. But, when I'm not working, when I'm on my days off, I'm in FL, man. I'm spitting stuff, man. I'm writing in my notes app, bro. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what's important to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can you walk us through the creation of the album "Who Counts Your Sins on Judgment Day"? First off, what inspired the title, and what message were you trying to
Oh
convey
my
through that
God.
title?
I feel like I came up with the title. I think I was just like doing stuff in the day. I don't, as you do,
Mm,
you're just like waking up, making coffee, cooking stuff or whatever. I'm the kind of guy, I have these like spontaneous ideas. Like
mhm,
they just come to me. They just come to my head. Like maybe I'll be driving and I'll be like, I should totally make a track, like a trap track that's like combined with like jazz fusion or just, just throw it out there, something like that. So
yeah.
I feel like that's kind of where the title came from. But if I want to like go into that further, who counts your sins on Judgment Day? At first it's like an obvious answer, right? Depending on your beliefs in like theism and deities and all that, it's God, right? But basically my album, it's not that simple, in that I feel like in the end, on this like material plane, you're the one judging yourself, you know? Even
Mhm,
if you do believe in a higher power, um, in the end of the day, in while you're alive, you have to face the consequences of your actions.
mhm,
You have to come to terms with the things that have happened to you, that you've done, etc. Right? So you're counting your own sins. You're holding yourself accountable. Things like that. And to answer that previous question, how the album came, this was like the process of I think a year, an amalgamation of all these songs. At first, me and my homeboy, whom you met at Magbar, I love him to death. We were trying to work on like a collab project. We were just trying to do something goofy
mhm,
or whatever. Um, and we ended up making Humongous off of that. It's one of the bonus tracks. It's just goofy. I showed my sampling skills, etc. He
mhm.
had this wild idea to like, I don't know. You gotta hear it. It's kind of crazy. But for the rest of it, um, I feel like it is the conclusion and epilogue of a period in my life that um I still think back to on this day.
Mhm.
Like it was like a lot of stress, hard times, I was very like depressed and anxious and paranoid. And essentially what that album is just kind of like a recollection of events, kind of like introspective and reflective all at the same time. It's like I'm looking into a mirror, talking to myself about the things that happened to me, essentially. And it spans all sorts of things: my relationship with my parents, a
Mhm.
past relationship that I had. I think you were talking to me about how you really loved one of the songs at the end. Did you happen to get the name of that?
It was one of the. I was listening to the CD, so
Yeah,
no, I
nah,
didn't
it's
get
all
the
good.
end of the.
I think it was Lost Connections. Is it the one where it's like really reverbed out?
I believe so. Yeah,
It
yeah,
was that one.
yeah.
So that one is my favorite song off the album because I use an Indonesian sample. If you don't know, I'm half Bengali and I'm half Indonesian, so it's like tying into my roots, an Indonesian pop sample. I'm not telling you what it is, but
Hmm.
and each verse is about somebody in my life who I do not speak to anymore.
Mm.
So in a way, it's like a reflection of my relationship with with that person, a reflection of how I acted in that relationship, and just I guess in the end, just it all comes down to being able to accept that that was a part of my life that's no longer a part of my life, and now I'm able to make a song about it.
Sounds like it's like complete reflection of your human experience.
Absolutely,
Yeah, that's very awesome.
absolutely.
So I love the album artwork. Did you do that as well?
I did not. The story behind it is actually kind of cool. So I was working at CVS
Hmm.
uh, as a pharmacy technician. It's an okay job. And this lady comes up. She needs her meds, etc. And me, the kind of person I am, I'm like I'm very attention to detail, positive. I think I either noticed her tattoos or her earrings, and I noticed how cool they were. And I was like, "Whoa, this is awesome, man!" And then we were chatting for a little bit. It was a slow time during the day, and we exchanged Instagrams. And this is the second piece that she made for me. The first piece I have at home. It's this huge, like, I don't know, it's not a mural. It was a huge piece. It's essentially, I'm a huge fan of BoJack Horseman. That's like my number one favorite TV show of all time. I essentially asked her to just make an amalgamation of two scenes, and she did really great on that. So when it came time to wanting to get album artwork, she was the first person who popped in my mind. And this was unique because I didn't really give her any tangible guidelines.
Right.
As in, like, I didn't specifically tell her what to draw. I was just like, hey, my album is about this. It's about contemplation of death. It's about being really existential, all that, right? And, I just want to see what your interpretation of the things I'm telling you is. And I also said to her, I don't want to see any updates. I only want to see the final product. And we met at a coffee shop. She unveiled the art. And I was so impressed. And we made a friend that day. We were over at Please and Thank You over on Frankfurt Avenue. And there was a guy there who was also looking at the art. And he was like, that's so sick. And like, I see him every now and then. Every time I go to Please and Thank You, I'll like chop it up with him or whatever. So it was really cool. It was like a kind of a bonding moment there with like all three of us. Would it be okay if I like said her like a ad or anything?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, her name is at Dream Monstera on Instagram.
Nice.
She makes amazing work. I ask her for art all the time. She's so cool. She's so cool.
Yeah, and absolutely plug her because that's incredible. Some of that, there's the guy in the background in the hood on the album artwork reminds me of a old PC game called Loom. I'm not sure if
I'm not familiar with
if
that.
she's an older woman or not, but that it came out in 1991, and it has a striking resemblance and just made me feel those positive, old nostalgic feelings.
Did you play that a lot when you were younger?
I played it a bit when I was younger. Yeah, so it was a good one. It just reminded me of that and like amalgamation of all sorts of things. But the last thing I would have thought is BoJack Horseman. That's crazy.
I mean, the themes of the show and of my album, they overlap a little bit. If you're familiar with BoJack Horseman.
Oh yeah, I watched it all the way through.
That
ending sequence is very powerful.
Oh my god!
My goodness.
Oh my god! My favorite
powerful
episode is the one episode where all he does is talk the entire episode.
Yeah.
That one was amazing.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine watch the end of BoJack Horseman before I got to see it, and I asked like, "How is it?" And he's like, "It sucks." Like in the best way, like, and I knew it. He said it sucks, but like, he didn't have to say like in the best way. I know by the way he said it, I knew what he meant because it's heavy, and so you don't leave that episode like feeling like real good.
You don't leave a lot of that.
You don't, and I think that's one of the points.
Too.
Yeah, it's very real with its audience, and it does paint it does give you a perspective that's not very often explored.
Oh yeah, many times it subverts the narrative of just what is present in animation. I think when it was first like released and everything, people thought it was going to be like the next Family Guy or something like that, and I was really surprised and I can't think of a word other than happy, but like elated, I guess, to see it go in the direction that it did. Really explore the human perspective without using a lot of humans, like that's the crazy part.
That's what's so charming, I think, about it. It's like all these people have, or these characters have extremely human and relatable problems.
Oh yeah.
But they also have problems in relation to who they are within the show, whether it be what species they are or outside of that. And so they have to balance both of those. And we get to see, and we get to superimpose or project ourselves onto these characters while still also seeing them as cartoonish, outlandish characters because they're portrayed as animals on the
If
show.
I may ask, who is your favorite character and why?
Oh man.
Let's just keep it with the main five.
Okay. It was either a main character who was throughout all of his I think her name begins with M, but it's the agent, the cat.
Princess Carolyn.
Princess Carolyn, that's
Yeah.
it. So Princess Carolyn, she was just a real one throughout of it. She she was so even when she should have dropped him so many times.
Oh my God.
So, but she I don't know, there's something about her persistence and wanting to do good by her client that just kind of and she's extremely flawed person, but just very, I enjoyed her presence in the show. But also loved just didn't show up too much, but the guy who his BoJack's neighbor who always showed up when he was at really low times, and you can do it, buddy. Just when he was trying to jog, and he falls over.
I think it was the baboon.
Yeah, he's just one step at a time, one foot in front of the other.
You can do it. It's just you got to do it every day.
Yes. Oh my God, that line.
That was amazing. That instilled so much hope into me. Because I remember I was watching a bulk of that TV show when I was really going through a tough time. So a lot, not all obviously, but a lot of the themes being portrayed in that show really resonated with me.
Yeah.
And it was really what I needed to hear at the time.
Yeah.
It's
there's a lot of honesty built in that
dude.
show. So yeah, it is really great. Shout out about BoJack Horseman. Did not think we'd be talking about BoJack Horseman today, but that's awesome. I love how you never know where this is going to go. So last question about just the album, real quick. How did you tackle and face any challenge during the production of the album? And how did you overcome those challenges, and what did you learn from that process?
Wow, that is a loaded question. That's an amazing question. I just want to say that's an amazing question.
Thanks.
So I wanted my album to kind of tell a loose story where if you really pay attention to every detail that I put into it, you'll be able to grasp the world that I tried to build. So in the beginning, I wanted to feel like a real introduction, I can't remember the sample I put at the very beginning. I think it was something about how you make mistakes, but that's okay. That's okay. You're human. You make mistakes. And then that's supposed to lead into the rest of the project, So it was tricky at times to connect one idea to another. So my friends clown on me for this. One time they saw me, the process of me writing an essay. And you know how most people do it. They go from intro to the 3 body paragraphs to the conclusion, yada, yada, yada. I jump around. So maybe I'll start with the introduction. I'll jump around to this body paragraph that I know I want to put in there, but I know I don't want it to go directly after the introduction. I'll go there. I'll maybe go maybe into the middle of the paragraph, start writing on the conclusion. I jump around a lot because the way I write is how the way my brain flows. And my brain tends to jump around a lot, and I believe that's how the process of this album happened. Is that I didn't come up with the intro first. I definitely the Humongous was the first one, and that's not even part of the actual album part. I threw in stuff that I was working on maybe a year or two before that, the very middle track is what is it? To Build Yourself Up One Brick at a Time, the one that's just a full-on instrumental. I think I started with that. I built around it. I went back to the intro.
Yes, of course.
assembled people for the conclusion and all that. But honestly, piecing it all together and making it feel like one cohesive story was one big thing. Another thing was that all the topics that I talked about, I wanted to treat with the utmost respect, you know, because, I want to respect myself. I want to respect the things that I've been through. But at the same time, I want to respect how topics like that are expressed and like carried out to the public. So, this one song called Turntables, it has a really nice sample. I love it. Um, at the end, it talks about like, in a way, like my relationship to my parents, and you know, so I'm sure people in the audience can relate. But when you have like a kind of strained relationship with your parents, you love them, and you love them a lot. But there are times and occasions where you guys don't see eye to eye, and depending on the severity, it causes the strain. And so I wanted to be able to tap into that emotion, but at the same time, like, not just paint my dad as my dad as like some evil villain or anything, because in the end, he's still my father, and I love him a lot, you know? Just stuff like that. And then there were bits in there talking about my previous relationship where I said this to my friend. I was like, I feel like I've been trying to make the same song for years in regards to my previous relationship, because I would just keep trying and trying and trying. Before this album, I released 2 mixtapes. They're not on the public anymore, so don't look for them. But I put them on Bandcamp. They were made about in 2021. Around the crux of the stuff that I was going through. And when I look back at those songs, I see an adolescent guy who's really trying to deal with his emotions, but he hasn't gotten to the level yet where he can really be able to process them and talk about it. So the songs produced in that era reflect exactly that. That I'm trying to talk about the stuff I'm going through while I'm going through it. And what I've learned from that is that sometimes you need to take a little bit of time to really process through everything before you can reflect on it and talk about it, So being able to talk about topics like that, sometimes it's just me kind of looking at myself and I'm like, am I ready? Am I ready to talk about this? Am I ready to put these words in my notes app, say this in front of a mic, and carry this out to the people?
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of like emotional energy. It's a daunting task. But I would say those are probably the hardest moments to really like conjure, I don't, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I hadn't heard somebody really discuss it from that angle before, and it is very true. Sometimes it's writing a song about a relationship or a person or an event or just a feeling, and you're like, how do I manifest or emulate this feeling in some way that feels right? How do I communicate like how I actually felt, or and in a way? And you'll make a song in so many different ways, and sometimes the song like genre will even change.
Yeah.
You'll be like, this is a rock song, oh, and this is now a rap song. It's like, because you feel that emotion, from all sorts of avenues of sound.
And to add on to that, like I said earlier, I really care about my writing. Like, I mean, oftentimes it'll be the first draft that I have, but, I want to ensure that every single word that I speak is like applicable. I'm not a fan of filler stuff. And I mean, I'm human. I make the mistakes sometimes. I'll say a line or two just because it like fits with the stanza or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
most of the time, when I'm really caring about a song that I make, a song that I write, I'm very analytical about my writing. You know, so just being able to choose the right words that reflect an experience is very important to me.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And yeah, I feel like people do, as artists, like stress so much about that sometimes that they end up throwing it out the window and being like, I'm making it for myself. Who cares about the world?
Oh,
You
I've
know, they'll
definitely, yeah.
interpret in however way they want. And so I love seeing the other side of that as well, because that's like where I'm at. And I see so many artists it's like, how are people going to take this? And it is what I'm saying, like the true version of what I'm trying to communicate, because
Yes.
we do look back at ourselves when we're younger and we felt like we really had it, we had the idea right, but we'll listen to old songs and old pieces of art we made, be like, oh yeah, that was a misguided angle or vision or
Mm-hmm.
ideology, that was a bit misguided. It's not, I don't even identify with that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do I know I'm not in the same situation now and I won't look back 10 years from now and say, yeah, that was so wrong. I don't know who that guy is. That couldn't be me. That guy was wild.
As
So,
as Earl Sweatshirt once said, I only get better with time.
mhm.
And I completely agree, I'm 21 right now, bro. 10 years, 31, I'll be looking back at myself and I'll be like, man, what am I doing?
Mhm.
I mean, I really hope I'm like really like rich and stuff when I'm 31, but
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I think, the only problem would be if you look back and be like, wow, I made music a lot better then. Or that
Uh,
guy's way better than I am now. That's when you're starting being seeing a problem there. So I think it's always great. It's a good sign to look back and be like, yeah, I'm way better now. I've made so much progress. Because it would be a shame if you look back and be like, I was way better 5 years ago. I don't know what I'm doing now.
yeah, no, I would honestly feel disappointed in myself.
Yeah.
If I'm not creating things that I think are up to par at the time,
Right.
if I'm listening back and I'm like, wow, I really prefer myself from like a few years ago. Because I think it's every artist's mission and goal to, well, not even just artists, just people in general, to be better than the person they were yesterday.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
yeah.
something
Yeah.
that I fundamentally believe in.
Mhm.
If I'm not constantly trying to improve myself, then I feel like just everything that I do kind of lacks a purpose.
Yeah.
And I just take all of that very seriously. I'm normally not a very serious guy. I joke around a lot. Man, if you see me in the middle of class, but no, I really take ideas like that very seriously. And music in general. I take music very seriously.
Mhm. Yeah. So I'm curious about what kind of feedback you've received from listeners of your album. Have there been any surprising reactions or interpretations that stood out to you? I always like to ask about if anybody's had a odd interpretation of their music. We're like, that's what you got from what I said. Sometimes an artist will like pour their heart out and be like, yeah, it's crazy. You like hated that guy. And I was like, no, I love that guy. What do you mean? And it's like, well, the way it sounded or to me. And so I'm curious, have you had any interpretations where you're like, oh my goodness, what is this
Your
about?
questions are amazing.
Thank you.
I'm trying to think. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the people that I showed my album to, they kind of give like a one word ish response. And like,
Thumbs up emoji.
yeah, it's like, oh, this is great. And I'm like, that's amazing that you think my music is great. Not that I
Yeah.
need the external validation, but I'd like for you to dive into that a bit more.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because I'm such a music nerd. And
Mhm.
when I talk about music that I love, I have all sorts of things to say about it. But I have to remember that not everybody's like me. Not everybody's going
Yeah.
to come into this being really critical and analytical about it.
Mm.
So that's part of like what I'm kind of accepting with releasing this music. Um, I showed this to my ex girlfriend, not the one I wrote a song about, another ex girlfriend,
Mhm.
and she had this whole paragraph. It's like I love this. Like you have moments that made me want to dance. You had moments that made me want to cry and like give you a hug. And then I love all of it. And that was that was feedback that really stuck with me. Like that was nice. That was really good to hear. Because when you work on something like this, it takes a lot out of you. Because you're putting a lot into it. You know? I'm trying to think of if there's anything else, really. I think that's kind of it's kind of the most I've really gotten. People have different favorite songs on the album, which I love. I love that because if everybody goes to one favorite song, then I'm just like, oh, that one's obviously the best.
That would be a red flag for me.
Yeah,
if everybody was like, this song's the good one, because it may be like, the other songs must not be the best. Yeah,
but I lost my train of thought. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Talk me back up again. What was I talking
about? Oh, you're
about?
good. We were just talking about how everybody has different favorite songs.
Right, yeah. Like, people will think the first one's amazing, then they'll say, oh, I love the second one. One of my friends from pharmacy school said that they loved the second one because I made, like, a calculus bar, and he's, like,
there you go,
a huge nerd for calculus, and I'm like, yeah, I do love me some derivatives, man.
Yeah.
A lot of people really like the third song. That one was probably one of my favorite beats on there too. The person that is featured on there, his name's Christian. I love that man. He's great. He's a great guy. He also produces and stuff. I'll like call him over to my house and be like, "Hey, bro, come through. We about to make something." And he's like, "All right, sure." And we just always manage to make such good stuff. But I convinced him. I was like, "Hey, bro, give me a verse on this, please." Yeah. And he doesn't particularly like his rapping stuff, but me and a lot of other people really love it. Like, I just feel like it fits the tone of the song so well, and then like it's amazing. A lot of people really like Turntables because it's the most accessible one. It has a trappy kind of beat at the end, and my favorite song's the same as yours. So because it has a lot of like emotions to it and. It reminds me of times that I don't particularly want back, but can just think about and remember.
Yeah. One of the first things that popped in my head when I listened to it is it feels like I'm swimming or I'm floating or so. Yeah. It's like a bath of sorts. It's a sound bath. So it's a very unique soundscape that I enjoy. Just like hearing like all these spaces filled that aren't normally filled, sometimes.
Oh yeah.
You just hear like some song on the radio, you're like, there's so many spaces here that aren't being filled, which is really cool to see what, some audio engineer like experts have done with like spatial audio and Dolby Atmos.
Yes.
I've mixed in Dolby Atmos. I learned how to do it as soon as Dolby Atmos became available on Logic. I learned how to do it because I thought it was going to be like, I got to be ahead of this. Everybody's going to want Dolby Atmos stuff. But then it's like, well, not everybody has like a 7.1 surround system and not everybody has headphones with gyroscope technology in them, which is how that works with Atmos and spatial tech on like I think maybe Beats have them. I know the AirPods have them where it has like a gyroscope in there that just like tracks your head movement.
Yeah, that is insane. So cool.
Yeah.
Dolby Atmos, is that the stuff they use in like movie theaters, right?
Yeah.
To like have like the surround sound like kind of follow you in everywhere.
Yeah, and they incorporate it into spatial audio, which is still Dolby, but it tracks where your head is and where the screen is.
So
and I experienced it in a pretty cool way. There's one time where I was like, whoa, I'm blown away with this. I was watching Lord of the Rings, or I think it was like from the new show Rings of Power that they had going on. And so they had a huge budget for that. And so they were able to mix it all in Dolby Atmos and spatial audio. And I was in the kitchen watching it on the iPad, and I had the headphones in, and a character emerged from outside the room from another scene, and I turned over, and I heard them like walk right, and it moved with my head, And so it was like a object in a 3D space that when I tracked, it was like, oh, they're walking in front of me right here. And so I learned about how that works in the program where it has like a model of the head. They have like full space, like 3D spaces, and then they have just the individual, I think, for spatial audio that you can focus on just like shoulders and up to your head and have like instruments, like imagine like a stem of like an instrument or a sample even. And I would track it to move in this rail around the person's head, so I could have like the move around, and then it could go wider and like set it on a track, and almost like an animation loop that you set it to, or it can be on a total automation track throughout the whole song. And I was like, this is insane, and people are going to be really into it. But I think it hasn't really caught on too much because people aren't able to experience it, but as often. Just people work, I imagine, would work really hard on a track and try to show it to all their friends, but they were like, I don't have anything to listen to this on, and they're like, oh well. So I think collectively engineers everywhere are kind of just waiting for
it to be kind of mainstream.
It's like for them to be in, like, how we had like the buds when that was like a thing instead of over the ear. Those eventually ended up being in like the cheapest lines of headphones to have the earbuds, and so it'll be something like even the cheapest earbuds you'll have in the future will have like sound canceling, and they'll have gyroscopes in them, because just like it's because they're not the quantum computing headphones. So it's like those headphones still interface with something that uses like bits instead of qubits, and so it won't even want to mess with them.
I'm very excited for that, honestly, because in my music, I utilize like panning a lot. I'm not the most fan when music tends to stay in mono. I love utilizing the entire stereo space.
Yeah.
Like I tend to like pan my hi-hats to like far left or far right, because I don't want them to be like right in front of you, or just like little tidbits. Like maybe sometime I learned this trick that I don't want to, or that's oh my God, give me a second. When you're panning drums, usually it's typical to keep them in mono and stuff like that.
Certain things, yeah.
Certain things, right? But I've kind of learned to take them a little bit to the right, take them a little bit to the left,
Yeah,
not put them straight here, right in front of your face,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And
I was taught about something early on called spatial or visual mixing, and spatial mixing, where you visualize where it's going to be, and and I saw some really cool graphs and charts that blew my mind. There's a YouTube video that's like 3 hours long on visual mixing.
I know exactly what you're talking
and it's like
about,
from the 90s. And so I always try to, what I do now, because if I'm mixing drums, it's for like rock bands and stuff. But so I just try to emulate what that drummer's drum set looks like. Not just a drum set is what I used to do, but if it's stems that I've got, I always have the drummer take a picture of their drum set for me. And so where their hi-hats are located, it's usually on the right side of the drum set. But sometimes, but depending on where that's positioned, a kick drum I'll always have straight down the middle. But where their tom's located, so I can know how to pan when they do a roll. Where's their floor tom at exactly, and the cymbal, like, and knowing like what kind of music it is to create what kind of space it is. So I'll pan just like a little bit to the right for that. But if it's like they have it maybe a bit further out, I'll pan it even more.
That's brilliant. I never thought about doing that, actually.
Just to kind of really stay true to the drummer themselves. But what you're doing is you are the drummer, essentially in this situation.
Pretty much, right?
You are able to take drums and drum sounds and make them into any organic, abstract, sound possible. I think we had talked over the phone, and I told you how one of the first things I wanted to do when I was getting into production was make impossible situations come to life through technology.
Yeah.
And one of those things I did was I there's a way to import 3D spaces or like
Yes, I vividly remember talking about it. It was so cool.
In Blender, you can make like a 3D space. So I basically got one that's emulated a dank like cave or something, and I imported that. What that would basically translate to into Space Designer, which is Logic Pro's reverb plugin, which is great. Space Designer is insane. Anybody who knows what's up, they know. Like that is an insane reverb plugin. It might be like the best plugin Logic's got, like just original one, just because of all the research that went into. They have so many different spaces, and they have like it's so much. But I put a grand piano into a cave system. It's like in no world could this possibly ever happen. And so what would that sound like? You know, it's like something out of a dream.
That's
and
so cool, man.
I wanted to do, and, you know, other things, you know, what are some just impossible situations where like this instrument would never be in this place. And that place has a certain acoustic signature, you know, and I think that's what music and technology, emergence of technology and music is all about, is creating things that we've never heard before. But like music is also a part of that as well, but it's just insane of how much that's our freedom of music and its creation has exploded.
You're definitely getting into like the talking about experimentation, which is one of my favorite things to do. Just I don't want my music to sound like everything on the radio. I don't want it to sound like stuff you've already heard. Although maybe I'll be a little inspired by it, you know. I'll admit it. I'll wear my inspirations on my sleeve, you know. Sometimes you'll really be able to tell, like, oh, I've been listening to a lot of Griselda this week. Oh, you know, I've been listening to that Kendrick disc, like, over and over and over, and you can tell from the stuff that I'm creating, right? But in the end, I always want to be, like, pushing myself, right? Like, oh, what happens if I reverse the snare? What happens if I take this reverse sample, I chop it up, etc., things like that. And like I said earlier, just incorporating all sorts of different sounds. In my basement, I have an assortment of instruments. So it's not just like the stock FL plugins or like VSTs, although they are wonderful as well. Like sometimes I'll call people over. I'm a disclaimer. I can't play much. I'm not that good at playing instruments, man. But what I am good at is knowing what sounds good, you know? Knowing how to direct somebody, being like, hey, I want you to play it like this, you know?
Right.
Something like that. So, before y'all clown me for having a bunch of instruments that I don't know how to play, okay? I have people who know how to play them. So
right,
I'll call them over. I'll be like, hey, man, you down to get some food and play this guitar for me? Or like, you know, just recently, I got some drums. They're rental. I'm not that rich. But I have a friend. He was so like, it was Christian. The one who like produces and stuff. He was so like, wow, over my drums. And I had another friend from pharmacy school. She hit me up and she was like, hey, I got like a pair of or like an electronic drum set. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm connecting the dots right now, you know?
Yeah.
So basically what happened is I gave my friend Christian the electric drum set, and I'm hoping he'll practice. I'm hoping he'll be able to play the drums better, and I'll be able to call him over and be like, hey man, do something sick for me.
Yeah.
And he'll just like go out of this world. So
that's awesome.
I have guitars, bass guitars. I have this funny thing called a omnichord. We discussed a bit about that. I love that thing. And hey, I'll collect more instruments. I just love unique sounds, you know? I love anything that makes a sound.
Yeah. I love collecting like old gear, old instruments that's like, what the heck does this old like Casio keyboard do? And you're like, oh my gosh.
And it sounds amazing.
Yeah, it sounds insane.
Or it doesn't sound amazing, but you can make it sound amazing.
Yeah. Or it looks cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I had $10,000 in my bank account right now, free to spend, I would buy a Rhodes piano.
Oh yeah.
I love the sound of a Rhodes piano. And I know it's a bit of a everybody says that type. But like listen to it and tell me it doesn't sound amazing.
Yeah, for real.
You know, it's so warm. It makes me feel at peace.
Yeah.
You know, just listening to somebody play a Rhodes piano.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that sound is really unique and special. But speaking of like old gear, you had mentioned that you love old technology.
Oh yeah.
what are some of your favorite pieces of old tech? For me, I love old like Mac stuff. I'm a sucker for anything that's like with green phosphor displays. Like old radar tech or whatever.
Ooh.
But
Do you have an oscilloscope somewhere? Do you know what that is?
I do. I don't, but I know somebody who does, and they have a old one that's like super badass. Yeah.
I saw them in like YouTube videos, and they were like awesome, dude.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the money to buy it, but to answer your question, I am an avid collector of vinyl.
Okay.
Like, I have hundreds of vinyl just chilling in my basement. A lot of it is like classics, like D'Angelo, Erykah Badu, Wu-Tang. You gotta have Wu-Tang. But a bunch of like newer stuff, Utopia, Travis Scott. And I'll like collect everything, man. R&B, rap. I have some rock records. I have like 2 crates specifically that I go over to Guest Room. Guest Room is the local like vinyl place over on Frankfurt Avenue. I love it there. And I'll just go through like the dollar bins, or I'll go through like the like old R&B soul, because I intend to use them for samples.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll just put them on the player, record it into FL, or however else I might do it. I have a bunch of machines for that. I just love vinyl. I love everything about it. I looked at how it was made. I looked at the mechanism for it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very like reverse engineering like that. I guess another thing I would say is like tape machine, in like the sound of the tape.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with how they used to record on tape?
Like reel to reel?
Yeah, reel to reel or stuff like that,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with D'Angelo's Untitled, How Does It Feel?
Yeah.
The reason why that song just cuts off is because they ran out of space to record, and it was
It was just at the perfect moment.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
But I love just the
kidding.
sound of it. It's so warm.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm producing, I always try to put like tape emulation somewhere on there. I have a tape recorder, I have a tape deck, but I haven't like figured out exactly how to like work it like that.
Yeah.
I'm a young guy still. But I do love looking at older technology and just looking at the people before me, how they used to do things. Because I think there's a lot to learn from there.
Oh, absolutely.
There's so much to learn from there that I just love and appreciate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will definitely always be somewhat fascinating to look back. And it was like, so I was just thinking about this recently, how that point in like human history is going to be just the smallest blip as far as like modern technology. They'll be like, we had like this small amount of time where we're like, all right, we're storing it on magnetic tape, data on magnetic tape, and then we're storing it on CDs, and then suddenly just on everywhere.
MP3s and streaming came in.
And now it's everywhere is on the cloud, everything.
Crazy,
we store data not physically anymore.
The thing about that is like, I'm such an appreciator of physical media. I made sure to put my album on CD. Like I just had to. Thing is, when I give it to everybody, they're like, I don't have a CD player, man. Or they like have to go to their cars or stuff like that. And I'm just like, I'm a little dismayed, but at the same time, I understand,
Yeah, no, physical media is kind of just making its way out, but it's just because of what's being, just the convenience of being able
it's all
to
about ease of access.
Not have to open up the CD-ROM book, the booklet you had and go like, oh, what do I want to listen to, and then it can be damaged and stuff. But I'm all for physical media. I love
physical media.
Something tangible from an artist you love. There's something to be said about that, like having, listening to the record and flipping through the art book. There's this artist called Jethro Tull, and they came out with an album called Thick as a Brick.
Mm-hmm.
And it has one song on it, but the song's like 2 hours or something. They're just, but it was just like a jam session. But they actually, the work they put in was into the album artwork. not only did it just like have a normal cover and everything, but because and this was only possible in the vinyl version, they may have done a CD version, but I don't think they did. They could have pulled it off, but what made the vinyl record so special is that they created an entire newspaper from this album for this album, Thick as a Brick. And it was like Thick as a Brick Times. And it was full. It had like 8 pages. It had a crossword puzzle. It had articles, tons of articles about this fictitious town with all these, humorous stories. It had, people who like had wrote into the paper. It had like obituaries. It was a full on like weather reports, full on the sports analytics and statistics, like full on newspaper. And it was just like, I can't believe they absolutely put more time into this than they did the actual song. And I was just like, you that's something you miss when you remove the physical medium in music. And there will be artists who absolutely are devastated that they don't get to deliver a physical thing to their audience, and will find a way to do so, even if the audience is like, I don't want a CD. I just, I'll as the artist, we'll send you a sticker, we'll send you a shirt, a hat, whatever, and the merchandise, the shirts and hats are forever, I feel.
Oh, yeah.
So you can create you can put something like, if you do your art, or if you want to put your artwork on a shirt, then that's a way to get something to your audience. But, I'd like, doing small things. One thing I had suggested that a band do is send out handwritten lyric books, or like write all your lyrics by hand, and then copy them all, and then number them 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20, and deliver those to your audience. It's something physical for them to keep of yours, because that means a lot more to some people than others. Some people will seek that and be like, I need the physical thing, because people love to collect, and there's people who collect, bands are still coming out with cassettes.
Yeah.
I'm in a band that's, has done the cassettes. They do well. And they're very cheap to make. You can make one. You can make them at home. It's pretty incredible. So I absolutely agree. And I see both sides. There is 2 sides to this. There's people who could care less about making something physical. They're like, I made the song. Yeah. The song is the thing. But I talked to people on both sides. The artist Jordan Brooks, who I interviewed before you, he was adamant about having CDs. He said even if no one buys them, and he's moving them, he's like, I'm making 100 every time. And I'm like, yeah, I feel that, because it means a lot to him, and it's important to him. And when your audience grows, they will, because it's important to you and because you offer it, they will want it as well. But it's just hard to it's hard to move initially, sometimes. But it because it means a lot more to some people than others.
The other thing about these CDs is each CD that I've passed out is something that I've burned personally. And like, I've signed each one personally, and I printed all of this out. I used a lot of money on printer ink, man. But
oh man, yeah,
I wanted to make sure that's
like half an inkjet right there.
Oh yeah, dude, I spent a lot of money on the ink, dude. But what's really important to me is articles that are made with like meaning in mind. Like, it's one thing to buy somebody a gift card for Target for like $10. Like, oh, that's cool. I can get like a
discount on whatever I buy next.
Right. Yeah. It's another thing to handcraft and make something, and I'm such an avid appreciator of people who decide to put their time and energy into crafting something, So in my basement, my home base, I have a lot of artwork. I'm a huge fan of art, visual art. But I also have this one letter from one of my best friends. It was my 18th birthday. And, I told him earlier, I was like, I'll appreciate anything you get me. But, I really like handcrafted stuff, And this person, he's not really much to talk about like his emotions or anything like that, or how he feels. And in this letter, he just told me how inspired he is by me, and just really put that out there, just what he really like thinks about me.
Hmm.
Like, and I was so touched by it, that I got a frame and everything, dude. It's on my wall. But I'm a sucker for that stuff, man. I love it a lot. You know, building relationships to the point where somebody can do that for me, and of course would love to do that for somebody else. Like,
Hmm.
that's very important to me.
Yeah.
Just cultivating these relationships with people.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And that's all we got, at the end of the day, is our relationships with other people.
It's a quote in BoJack is like, all we have are the connections we make.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious of how you feel about advancements in modern technology, AI, quantum computing, especially those last two, and how they will influence and affect the creation of music going forward, and how you see them influencing your creative process going forward, and if you would implement any of that in your tool belt and how you would see yourself doing that.
So I have like a very iffy relationship with AI. Like when it was first coming out and there were these like AI covers of like The Weeknd and Drake and stuff, and it's essentially taking somebody's voice and creating something that they didn't have the consent to do, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Of course I'd look at that a little sideways,
Yeah.
right? Because it's taking somebody's voice and doing things that they may not have agreed to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
But my opinion has changed a little bit with songs such as Metro Boomin's BBL Drizzy. And there's this song on JPEG Mafia's new album called Either On or Off the Drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both amazing. With JPEG Mafia specifically, I think this is public knowledge. I'm not sample snitching or nothing, but he utilized an AI cover of a Future song that turned it into blues. So it's like, if you're familiar with Turn On the Lights, it's like a blues cover of it. And what JPEG Mafia did is he sampled that, and a lot of people, myself included, think it's like the best song on the album. Because like, who thinks to do that?
Right.
Who thinks to take an AI cover of Turn On the Lights and turn it into one of the most beautiful songs you can think of, man?
Yeah.
And I'm a little more okay with that because you're not utilizing somebody else's voice to, at least I don't think so. You can correct me if I'm wrong. You're not utilizing somebody else's voice to create something they didn't make,
Yeah.
You're taking a pre-existing thing and kind of just turning it into something else.
Yeah.
Which I'm a little more okay with, you know? So,
Doesn't seem as brazen.
yeah, it's not as like morally bankrupt.
Right.
But as far as utilizing it in my own music, obviously I'm not gonna do a tailor-made freestyle. That's that's incredibly disrespectful. But as far as utilizing AI and how like Metro Boomin or JPEG Mafia did it, I would definitely be down to. I would love to do something like that. Like, hey, if somebody took like a Biba Doobie song and like turned it into like freaking Death Grips, made it all Death Grips like, and I'll be like, that's sick, and I'll put it in my sample that. Hey, like those are the endless possibilities that I'm here for, man. Like, as I said earlier, I love just taking anything and turning it into something else. So I'm definitely open to something like that. Yeah, I think that answered.
Yeah,
the question
absolutely.
there.
That's a very great answer. Thank you. So I understand that you are into philosophy a bit. I'd love to, get your take on certain philosophical subjects here.
You asked me about the trolley problem, bro.
No, not quite. Almost there. Almost
there. Oh no, dude.
We're starting light here.
Okay.
It's on the nature of reality.
Oh,
So just
that's light.
That's light subjects.
Okay. Okay, David Hume.
So I'm curious of what you believe. Just whether reality is objective, or do you think it's shaped by the individual perception, and how do you think how individual perception affects the way we create art?
That is like three beautiful questions in one. So I want to start off by saying, um, I am not colorblind. I can see that this is green. Maybe not to y'all, but
Right.
this is green. This is black. That's translucent, transparent, right? My other friend, whom you met at Magbar, he can't see stuff like that. He'll think that this is like some greenish red, like type amalgamation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what he's seeing, and he doesn't know what I'm seeing,
Right.
right? And if you really think about how we perceive vision, right? It's, what is it? So light comes into our pupils. What is it? It's the colors that are created here. Those are the ones that are not absorbed by white light. So I'm seeing that this is not green to y'all, but I'm seeing that this is green because all other colors in the white light spectrum are being absorbed by this. Yeah. And that image is being projected into our retinas. Our retinas flip it. You know, it's been a minute since I took neuroscience regarding the eyes, so maybe I'm messing things up here. But, you know, our retinas flip it, and our brain interprets that using the ocular, whatever, the ocular part of your brain. I'm so sorry, neuroscience teacher. But essentially, what I'm saying with all that is like the image that's projected in our brain, it may not be what's actually there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, maybe the lights aren't really like that. You know, maybe the cameras really aren't like that. But that's just what our brains are like interpreting based on sensory external stimuli. So I think that pretty much answers part of that question. As far as to how I utilize that in my music, ooh, that's a thinker.
Yeah. You think about how people may perceive something that you put out there a completely different way.
Wow. You
Just like your friend
connected
who's-
two neurons in my brain as soon as you said that sentence, dude. I guess to try to answer that question, I want to say that sometimes, a lot of times, when I mix my songs, I tend to not make the vocals so out there, like fit on top of the beat. Rather, oftentimes, I like to let it sit within the beat. And I know it's a unique mixing choice, because most people are like, hey, I want to hear what you're saying and everything, right? But, you know, vocals are an instrument, and I feel like you got to balance all that together. So, like, sometimes people may not interpret my lyrics in the way I intend it or how it be. But to like kind of piggyback off what I was talking about regarding like the eye and everything, it's about how you see it, you know? So maybe I'll say something, and when I write it, my intention is like, oh, this depicts a past relationship that I had and what I got out of that and everything like that. And how a listener may see it, it might be like, oh, like this kind of relates to something that happened with my mom. You know, it's essentially the answer that I'm giving is like, it is all about the individual's perspective on that, from what I think. None of this might be real. I don't really care if it's not real. Cogito ergo sum, you know what I'm saying? I think therefore I am. But my entire thing is just like, hey, I think I'm here. I'm just gonna enjoy what I think is real until I can't anymore. And that's pretty much how I go about my day to day.
Absolutely. I love that answer. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So we had talked about stoicism on a phone call earlier, and I'm curious about your opinion on this. So Marcus Aurelius talked a lot about suffering through growth. I think Seneca did as well.
Yeah.
And so do you believe that suffering is necessary for growth? And the way this kind of translates through music is some of the best music I've ever heard has come from, hardship.
I have a lot of ways I can answer this question. The first thing I thought about was Buddhism and
Mm-hmm.
how its core core teachings is that suffering is just eternal, right? And I was explaining this to my friend earlier that like the ultimate goal is to try to reincarnate out of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit of a sidebar, but what I want to say to that is so as human beings, evolution and natural selection has taught us that when you focus on everything that can go wrong, on the negative surrounding you, you and your progeny will survive. That's what natural selection teaches us. Unfortunately, that's how anxiety happens in all of us and all that. But to relate to, in regards to the best music that we know of, these negative emotions stick out the most simply because of that. You know, we think of that. We think of the negative, and it's always on our mind, and it elicits such a visceral reaction from us. You know, like I could name many times how I've just cried full on tears off of like just amazingly emotionally raw like sounds and lyrics, and I'm reading them off of Genius. Just the other day, man. I love Kendrick Lamar. He's one of my favorites, especially in the mainstream scene. Father Time, off of his latest album, it was a lot for me, you know, because with what he was speaking about regarding like his father and how like him growing up, his father was telling him was like, you know, men don't cry, men can't feel weak,
Mm-hmm.
things like that, you know? And like I think about that, I think about how I was raised, and I think about how I want to raise my kids, you know? Well, the teachings that I want to impart onto them. And all of that combined together is just I think suffering is a constant in the universe. I think every human being is bound to experience that in some way, shape, or form. You know, and I think the most important part of all that is how you react to it, is how you deal with it, you know? Um, I'm not gonna throw shade to anybody or anybody who goes through like hard times or anything like that, but you know, there's a difference between somebody who turns to alcohol, who turns to recreational drugs to try to numb their pain, versus somebody who actively works at coming to terms with it and coming like to peace with it. And I'm very I'm a strong believer that to really achieve your truest potential, you need to be able to recognize your faults and your vices and essentially everything that sucks about you, you know? Because you are not just your best qualities. That would be great if you were.
Mm-hmm.
That would be great if like if everybody thought about
Yeah.
me, they'd be like, "Oh my god, he's an amazing writer. He's an amazing musical artist. He's so good at school." Stuff like
Yeah.
that. But that's not all that I am,
Mm-hmm.
you know? I suck at some things, you know?
Mhm.
Sometimes I don't know when to shut up. My friends tell me that one a lot. But you know, sometimes I can be a little tone deaf and insensitive. I think just being able to understand a holistic perspective of yourself, you know, you'll be able to like walk around with your head held up high, you know? Because then what can somebody tell you that you don't already know?
Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get so
No, I love
preachy and all that, but that's just like walking around in life, you know?
that. Mm.
I've had people call me the best at things, I've had people call me the worst at things. And neither of those things are true.
Yeah. To get the full, honest picture of it all, of yourself. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You know how people say that like there's two sides to every story?
Mm-hmm.
That's not true.
Yeah.
There's one side, there's the other side, and there's the truth.
Yeah.
How things actually
And
happen.
there's all the other sides that interpret that in their own way. So,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, that well said. I love that.
Thank you.
So I want to talk to you about comics.
Comics.
and manga. If you
I'm
ever
not a big manga
big,
reader.
big, big
My friends
comics.
are. They love that stuff, but comics specifically. What did you want to ask me about, man?
So comic books and manga and graphic novels,
Oh yeah.
what have you, have had a unique cultural impact across the world. What do you think it is about these mediums that resonate so deeply with people from all different backgrounds from all around the world? It doesn't seem to be just like a American thing or a Japanese thing or a European thing. Like people all over the world love comic books, and what do you think it is about them that makes it so universal?
First of all, amazing question. You really had me thinking there. Um, I think it's a lot of different things about the medium of comics specifically. First, we can talk about character creation, which I think isn't just like specific to comic books. It can be with any sort of medium. People love to root for a character that they can relate to, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Specifically with myself, my favorite character is Spider Man. All right. And like he's been my favorite since I was a kid. I used to grow up watching with my parents the 90s animated TV show. That was awesome. But what people love specifically about Spider Man is just how much he's like us, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So he's this guy from Queens. He can barely make ends meet. You know, he's always, at least in his initial like runs and all that, he's going through financial issues with his aunt. And he has to balance that alongside being Spider Man. And then the quote that everybody knows, which wasn't said by Uncle Ben at first. It was actually just like a little like thing at the end of the comic. It was with great power comes great responsibility. You know, you can see that like ooze throughout his entire life, right?
Yeah.
He always has to make a decision whether he wants to save the city or if he can just chill out and be Peter for a second. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he had the present day comics are so weird regarding his relationship with Mary Jane, but you know, he had a girl and eventually a wife and then eventually not anymore. But that he had to juggle with like being Spider-Man at the same time, you know. It
Yeah.
was very difficult to keep a personal life,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I just think all that is super relatable, you know, just
Yeah.
being a guy who's really just trying to do their best. That's really what it comes down to. And I'm sure that's a sentiment that's shared by a lot of people.
Yeah.
So character creation and world building for sure. Um, there's also the fantastical element about comic books that
Mm-hmm.
while like somebody like Spider-Man is grounded, you know, they're so street level. You have somebody like we're gonna go DC for a second. We're gonna talk about Superman. He's an alien. He comes from Krypton. He was here. He Krypton like fucking blew up or some shit, and came here. And he's being raised by adopted parents, and he grew up on good ideals and everything. Oh, he's also practically invincible. He has a breath of that can freeze things. He has laser eyes, super strength, super speed. He can fly. He can do all that stuff, you know. And I think when people look at these fantastical elements, you know, it's just letting the imagination run free, like
Yeah.
thinking about things that aren't really possible, you know, unless you have like a bunch of CGI and blue screens and oh, you have like $100 billion budget from Marvel Studios. But
Mm-hmm.
like people love to fantasize and think about things that aren't really real, but it would be cool if they were real, you know. That and I guess in more recent times, like seeing all like the comic book world be put on the big screen. Like I know that was like for me that was really cool. I remember for a long time I thought the Avengers was my favorite movie because I had never seen anything along the lines of that before. I've never seen a whole universe be created from these individual like IPs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you get the Hulk, you get the Iron Man, you get Thor, you bring them all together, you try to defeat the bad guy.
Yeah.
And like I thought that was so cool to me. Um I have like posters of Spider-Man all over my room and stuff like that and um I just appreciate a lot about what this character has like done for my life, man.
Mm-hmm.
Cuz in a way it was I, okay, I don't like using the word role model ever because I feel like role model completely contradicts what I was saying earlier that you have to accept everything about somebody. But if I were to say there was any sort of role model in my life, it would probably be Spider-Man, man, cuz
Mm-hmm.
he's just such a genuine person who goes through real human stuff.
Yeah, that is exactly what I was you know looking to hear. I see comics as being like a safe haven
Yeah.
for young people who might be going through something, and so it can also be not just a safe haven, but an escape, from
Definitely.
a certain situation.
Definitely.
I see, of course, the fantastic elements. It can be something that takes you away from your situation so much, so it's like in a different universe where the
Yeah.
rules are different, or it can be about somebody who you can relate to, and so it's able to ground you in that certain way. And of course, can't not talk about representation in comics and
Oh,
how
definitely.
that has made people, all cultural backgrounds, feel included and see themselves as that hero in that comic book. And yeah, just personal impact of how these characters can shape your life in a real way.
I love how you mentioned the diversity aspect of it because I remember first hearing about Kamala Khan, if you're familiar with that. She goes by Miss Marvel, which was Carol Danvers' first name in the comics.
Mm.
And, I didn't know much about her. I saw she was brown, which, as a brown man myself, that's pretty cool. And I haven't read much on the comics, but then I saw the series that they did, how she's like a Pakistani American. And, you know, um, coming from a background like myself, that I'm some like mixed ethnically. I'm half Bengali, half Indonesian. Um, Being able to see parts of my culture like kind of represented on the media is pretty cool, man. Like being able to like hear what Kamala Khan is talking about and like actually sort of understand. I'll admit I'm pretty whitewashed, but in the end I'm still a brown man mostly. But like it's pretty cool, and I don't really like it when people undermine how important diversity is, you know? Um Somebody told me about how they were trying to find a I think it was like a Barbie that wasn't like white, and they were like a black individual, and it was really hard for them to like come to terms that like she doesn't look like me, something like that.
Yeah, that is extremely important, and it's not talked about enough.
Definitely.
I'm curious of what you see the future of comics like heading, and do you see with the rise of digital platforms and global fan bases, how do you think that affects going forward with comics? Do you think they'll still always keep this physical medium, or is that so important? Like I've met, people who are like, I've read Watchmen on my iPad and it was totally different because I was able to zoom in and I had like, the brightness on high. And so I was able to, and, people say it's a bit different of experience. And so I'm curious of how you think that'll affect the future of comics going forward. And maybe there's future mediums that we aren't considering of how we'll
So
experience them,
I
perhaps
would
like
connect.
in VR or something.
Yeah, I would connect that to the discussion we had earlier about like physical media concerning like vinyl and CDs. Um, I believe things like that hold such a novelty to them that I don't personally think they're ever really going to go away. I think there's always going to be like surges and things like that because there is always going to be people who appreciate the physical copies of things.
Oh, yeah.
As you said, sometimes even the vinyl cover tells a story. And you can see the craftsmanship with what's like being created there. And then I think it's similar, although I personally don't think it's as much as like with music enthusiasts. Because I could be wrong, but I don't think. Well, they do have alternate covers for comic books, which I saw recently. There's this comic book place off of it's right next to St. Matthew's Mall. I've been going there from time to time, and I just see that they have all sorts of alternate covers for the same issue, and I think that's really cool. If you're really into that, then that's definitely like some collector's edition stuff you can do. But I would be a liar if I said like I didn't check out stuff online. If I didn't have like a Marvel Unlimited, like didn't check it out for a little bit. You know, even though like I really do prefer physical media a lot, it comes down to ease of access, as we said earlier. You know,
Yes, absolutely.
when you're streaming something on Spotify, you're not thinking about how that artist is only going to make a percent of a cent off of that one
Mhm.
stream. You're thinking about how can I listen to this as quick and easy as possible,
That's right.
you know? And it's sad to say, but that's how it is.
Yeah. And it's good to be mindful from the audience perspective and from the artist perspective. You see, on one end, as the artist, you see somebody who's like, well, you could have bought the physical album, or you could have gone to the band camp and supported. And you may think, yeah, they could have supported in these other ways, where, streaming only gives you, cents, per, 1,000 streams.
Yeah.
But also from the audience standpoint of where we do need to realize, there's some people who that's the only way they can, or they're not even going to listen. They're going to listen to on YouTube
Yeah.
when you do on Distro. And we've all been there. We all to get, as you said, by any means, but I think, as long as both sides are aware of that, it's like the audience is like, I'm going to support when I can, but for now I rock with you. I just got to listen to the free one. And for the artist to be like, I know you can't support me right now, but I appreciate you rocking with me. And that alone is amazing. It's huge. Thank you. It's incredible when somebody even just wants to listen to your music, experience your art in some way. It's really powerful. And
Definitely.
it becomes overwhelming. I can't imagine what it's like when you can't even like count the amount, or, possibly know the amount of people who you've had this influence on, like somebody, like people who've created these characters in comic books, like Spider-Man for you. That character was created, but the person who created it, how could they possibly know all the people they've influenced and how like deeply it's influenced their lives? It's pretty incredible. I can't imagine, what it's like to, just not to lose grasp, of that influence.
Oh yeah, it could definitely go to your head sometimes.
Yeah.
But that really fascinates me when something you create becomes bigger than yourself.
Yeah. And you're already tapping into something bigger than yourself to create that thing.
Right?
We're tapping into this, whatever you want to call it, collective conscious, what have you, where like you are tapping into something that's just totally outside of you to help create something that you have experienced and you're trying to, translate to and communicate to other people in hopes that they will understand your situation, also feel less alone in their situation because they feel heard from hearing your music. Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
All right. So I have heard this sentiment that we're going to talk about music specifically, that there is no really original music in the sense that the stuff that you make is going to be inspired by somebody who's inspired by somebody who's inspired by somebody which samples somebody which uses this chord progression, etc. And I want to know what you think about that. Do you agree or?
It reminds me of a quote. So I'll first answer with a quote. There are 88 keys on the piano, but within that, an entire universe.
Wait.
And there are 88 keys on the piano. It's also been said, but you will never run out of music. The music is infinite.
I have heard this quote recently.
Yeah.
I can't remember who said it, and it's gonna bug me. But
yeah, it was originally by a pianist.
Yeah.
Who said it was originally by, I think his name is Philip something. He's from Spain, so he's a Spanish pianist. But that's all I know for now. But
did you say that on Jordan Brooks's episode? I feel like
I may have.
I think that's where I got it from. I literally got it from you.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I love that quote because it is so true. Because like people can. It's easy to think. You only have so many chords, you only have so many notes.
Yes.
How are we able to, when is the mathematical end of this where it's like, okay, we've made all the music. But I think because due to the fact that human experience and emotion is infinite, and we're moving forward in time where it's always changing, and we're no one can ever relate to, especially in these days, no one can really relate to what the world was just a few months ago, just a few years ago,
Yeah.
to where, and music is not just a snapshot of someone's emotion and what they were going through at that time, but it's also a snapshot of a time and place most often. And what's beautiful about music is it's not just a snapshot of a time and place, like a painting is obviously a snapshot of this specific thing, but it can be individual to the person. Like a song that you remember hearing and you remember where you were when you first heard it. So every time you hear that song, you're taken to that time and place. And that song is about a time and place or a thing or emotion or an event that happened, but you also have a tied emotional connection to it. So I think that's, I think to answer your question, I think, with the spectrum of sound we're working with, no matter that, even though we can count some notes with both hands or just one hand that we have, I think it is truly infinite. And so I think, but really there is something to be said about, when I listen to certain genres, like I listen to like pop punk, I'll be like, those really are the same 5 chords, like all of it. And I'm like, okay, well, and it's like, but still the way that it's delivered and the way it's engineered, even like you could take the same exact song and you could release it as like a super polished version or a really rough, cool demo. There's like something I love about like some things that are engineered to kind of sound bad in a way that I love that, so it's like or sounding rough or gritty or raw on purpose, because that's what the song's about, because the song would be betraying itself by being engineered in a super polished and produced fashion. Just like I think the main genre that screams this is black metal. Like it by definition and by its character, it cannot be produced in a pretty way. It's by its nature, it has to be made like you have to record it in the bottom of a well, so because you have to do it on like a Walkman or something, like recorded on like an old tape or something. But I think there's just so many variables in human emotion, experience, the way we even present the song. It can be, there's so many different metaphors you could put it to, but it's like you might experience a meal different if it's like you like a pack, like a bowl of ramen noodles. If you're eating it out of the styrofoam, you're gonna have a different experience than when you're eating it like out of like a beautiful china bowl, something that's just like ornate and beautiful and ceremonious with chopsticks. It feels different. And same thing with with alcohol. You could drink a shitty beer, cheap beer out of the can, and you're like, all right. But if you pour that same beer into a nice glass and serve it to somebody, like, this is nice. This is really nice. What is this? This must be really great. But they'd sip the same thing out of a beer bag and be like, oh, I see what this is. So you could even be delivered something, and the audience will be like, this is a whole different thing than what it really is. But it's because it's dressed in this way. The root thing is the same. It's still a Miller High Life, but it's in a champagne glass on this side, and it's in its original form here. So I think the way we dress up things and the way we deliver things, it's just, there's too many variables. I think certain genres that might be see themselves falling into sameness, are bound to grow and evolve out of that, because I think people who are really love the genre, and if they see themselves falling into the same patterns, somebody is going to break the mold again, and it's going to pop and set the new trend, because people are like, this is different. But it's the genre we love, but it's totally new, but it's recognizable. And that's what will prevail and set the new tone. going forward.
Yeah, yeah,
I think
definitely.
that will happen, and certain genres, it happens more often. I'd say like, going back pop punk, I see a lot of sameness and patterns though, but I also see people breaking the mold in new ways, but it's a bit more difficult than breaking the mold in hip hop where it's like, oh my gosh, you are starting with such a clear palette. I mean, there's just nothing there, and then you can just be like, okay, these drums from this, song I found on a jazz album that from Japan that no one's ever heard of. I like the drums on this. We'll start with this, and then maybe we'll take like a sample of somebody like reciting a sermon in a language that I don't know, but I love the vibe of it as the intro. And so you start with all so abstract, whereas certain genres really kind of call for a more solid and universal framework and blueprint for it. So that's what's so great about hip hop is that the framework is maybe just have drums.
Like maybe that's even maybe.
Yeah, you don't even need the drums.
Marciano.
Yeah, that's about the framework of rap, of hip hop, and you're just probably gonna want some drums in there, and anything else is kind of a suggestion from there.
I'm gonna take that idea now. Get the Japanese drums and the sermon now. I'm gonna write that down later. I'm gonna make sure I make a song out of that.
Yeah, I had this kick where I was listening to jazz that was coming out of Japan in the 80s. And one of my artists, Nice the Nip, I talked to her about it. She's like, I was into that too. And to the point where, you get so into your world, immersed in your like echo chamber world, is that it could seem like we both joked how it's like it seemed like everybody was sampling Japanese jazz from the 80s to the point where it was played out. But in reality, nobody knows what the hell you're talking about. Like, what? But because we're so deep in these circles, it's like, oh, everyone's cleaned out all of them because you hear them everywhere now. And it's like, I think they made the Japanese jazz samples, interpretations and Japanese interpretations of some Western music is like incredible. It's like, his Lightweight did it better. It's like, oh my gosh.
Japanese music in general is just amazing.
Yeah, incredible. And we just kind of found that we were thinking of sampling the same thing. And I think that genre has fallen a bit. At the time, it fell more into vaporwave production than it did into hip-hop production. But I think there's some really nice stuff out there. And especially with, I've gone on about how we're able to split stems. Now that we're able to split stems, it's over. We can sample anything. And I think producers are gatekeeping right now. And I understand because this is so big that it's like, should we tell the world? Because like DMCA exists, copyright exists, sample snitching is going to be a lot harder though when you are able to rip something out of this and this and this and this. And it's oh, these are the drums from a AI remake of this song. And it's like it'll be so far, and it'll only be like the snare sound or something. And so you'll able to like really get obscure with it where there's like almost no way to, and it just becomes just art again, in this beautiful way.
That's one part I forgot about talking about regarding the AI stuff. I love AI stem splitting. It's insane. Oh my God. Let me tell you, before that stuff happened and I'm over here trying to EQ a snare out of like a Kanye song or something. And I'm like, why? I still hear the hi-hat. I still hear it. I'm trying to get the
as much as I'm pulling down the highs on the EQ.
It's not working.
It's not. And
then I pull it down too much. Oh, now the snare, it sounds muddy.
That really was, and I really want to learn more about how it does it. And I know Lightweight, it is just like a extremely surgical, how like a EQ works on bands.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of bands.
Yeah.
The AI is working on a way higher amount of bands than we normally took, because we're almost, it's almost, the AI could see what we do as primitive, where we just pull down, like scoop the mids, just like pull down just a chunk 4 dBs across 500 hertz, just like, and it's like, okay, yeah, that works. You can just carve a giant cave system or a valley all the way through your mix, and that works. But AI is like, well, we could dynamically EQ the whole time, and it would be it's so surgical, like with the amount of bands, it's like you could hardly see all the small things
There's
it's
like
doing.
no bleeding from anything else.
Yeah, and so it's something that just would be, if we could do it, it would be really annoying to do, like,
It's
but
super
I just think
tedious.
when we were trying to do it ourselves, because I think engineers have always, and producers have tried to, get that hi-hat out of there, get that sample. It would be so perfect if it just, that other sound wasn't in there, and tried to do it ourselves and just pulled our hair out and been like, I can't do it. I mean, and if you were able to, if you were given that, I think we're given maybe like 88 bands or something, and like I know that's what I'm working with in the Logic EQ. But you can like work with way more or way less. But I think when you're talking about tens of thousands of EQ bands, like it would just, you'd be zooming in like, and be like, okay, well, you wouldn't be able to hear what you pull one down. You'd be like, I hear nothing. I don't understand. And so you'd pull like a bunch down. You'd be like, I'm starting to hear it. And then you'd be like, wait, and now all I'm doing is just going back to the old way, because I'm just pulling down like 200, 300 bands of EQ at a time just to try to hear what, our primitive brain's like, okay, I sound different now, and
man.
it's, that was a long answer to your question.
No, that's okay. I loved it.
Advice you would wish you'd known earlier.
There's a lot of answers to that question.
Yeah.
Do you just mean like
and
music?
concerning maybe being an artist?
Being an artist?
Mm-hmm.
I'm still trying to get to the level of like some of my contemporaries, Like I go to a show, I go to a Wide Arm show, I go to a Hoosier show, and their production is amazing. Their stage presence is amazing. Their just everything about it just has me like super inspired for sure. But at the same time, and it's something I'm also like kind of working on myself with. I'm gonna do a part 2 to that answer, because it just got me thinking. It's like there's a lot of things I didn't notice about myself until I really started taking music seriously. But basically, when I see my contemporaries do amazing things, I of course I look back on myself, and I'm like, it's like a 2-step process. A, it's like, damn, I'm not as good as them.
Right.
And then B, it's like, what do I have to do to be as good as them? And so to what I said earlier about like things I learned being an artist, I have a lot of like insecurities concerning that. I learned that like I'm very protective of my art in that way. And I'm a perfectionist to the extent that like I want things to really sound the way that I envision it to be, And like concerning my production, the mixing and mastering that I do alongside that, having full creative control is wonderful. But at the same time, I encounter problems that just I'm not exactly able to solve,
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'll listen back to a mix. I said it to my friends. They all say it's amazing. I listen back to it and I'm like, ooh, it's kind of muddy here. Ooh, this part's a little loud, Or this is one I encounter a lot. This part isn't loud enough. What am I doing wrong regarding my mastering? Usually the answer is that my lows are too high. But I'm very like nitpicky about myself, and I need to tell this story. So the other day, me and my homeboy, we were invited to an album release party from 2 for 1. It was at the Botanical Gardens. It was beautiful. His music is amazing. But I remember there were some really cool people in attendance. Artists everywhere. There's engineers. We met a producer who produced on Her Loss.
Whoa.
I don't like Drake, but still.
Yeah, that's insane.
And like just all of that, I remember, bro, I saw Jack Harlow there, right? And I just start kind of panicking. Not because he's Jack Harlow. And I made sure of myself that I'm like, no, it's not because he's like the white guy on the billboards. It's because I feel like I don't have the portfolio that adds up to their accomplishments, you know? I know I'm an artist. I know I'm very good at what I do. I'm confident in that. But in regards to like exposure and just how well people know me and all, and being able to recognize me for the work that I create, I didn't see myself as like on par to that. And that like tension created in my brain just, it's a lot to deal with, man.
Oh yeah.
Cause like I'm a budding artist, bro. I mean, I am an artist, but in terms of the scene, like I'm only just recently trying to get myself out there. I'm only recently realizing that there's so much more that I can do besides keeping my music to just me and my friends,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And to just be thrust into a room like that, it's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane. And don't get me wrong, everybody I met there was wonderful, amazing. It's just me, you know? I was reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and there was a part in there that really stuck out to me. It's like anything that you like perceive as like bad or negative honestly comes from yourself, you know? And you can extend that to mean anything, you know,
Mhm.
because I stubbed my toe, you know, the sensory, the processes, it's how my brain is interpreting that I'm stubbing my toe. If that didn't work, then I wouldn't feel any hurt, whatever. But in that moment specifically that I'm talking about, it's I'm creating the problem myself, you know?
Mhm.
Me and Jack Harlow, we're humans. We're human beings. Me and 2 for 1, we're human beings. Me and everybody else in that room. We're all human beings, you know? Created from the same stuff that God made, or I don't know if you believe in that, you know, whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
It's just my perception of myself and my quality of my work, and just being all metacognitive about that, thinking about how I'm thinking about that, and it just, it spirals, man. It
Yeah.
spirals. So, dang, I had a really long answer to a really simple question, but
No, that was a great answer, and it's true. Absolutely, yeah. That was a yeah. I asked you kind of a little bit of an out of pocket question. You turned it around and made it, like a real story about something that happened to you and something a lot of people can relate to.
yeah, you know, imposter syndrome is real, dude.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really easy to tell other people that they're just intrinsically worth something, you know?
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's what I think, you know? Everybody's inherently worth something, right? Just because you
Mm-hmm.
exist. But to tell myself that when I feel like I have such high standards of myself in regards to the art that I create, you know, it's difficult. It's difficult.
Yeah. We put so much pressure on ourselves, and it's so easy to give validation and praise and to others,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so difficult to give it to ourselves because we just so often feel like we haven't earned it,
Mm-hmm.
and because we see all these, as soon as we reach one goal, we're like on to the next one, where we can, with all of that veil of pressure removed, we're able to support our friends and peers,
Mm-hmm.
in ways. I think that's why we have to be here for each other, because like it's
Yeah,
hard.
man.
It at the end of the day, while it is true that no one else is going to do it except for you. No one, you have to be your biggest fan in a lot of
Yeah,
ways,
definitely, dude.
because but it's so hard because you're also your biggest critic.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, somebody's like, I mess with you, man, but that mix was muddy and like those bars were kind of weak, and you're like, but
Yeah, I'm saying that to
it's,
myself,
but you also
you
have
know?
to,
Yeah.
you have to start it with, you're doing great. I mess with you. I rock with you, because like it's so often or not that we only give ourselves the, your mix sucks,
Mhm.
you suck, you look tired, just you're not doing great, just all these things that we throw at each other. But at the end of that, we should be like, but you're really doing, I know, since I'm you're doing the best you can. And if you're doing the best you can right now, that's what's important. Like, because what's worse than not giving it all you got, because, and looking back and knowing you didn't give it all you got, and give it every ounce of strength you possibly could to make sure that it can, if it could happen, it did. And if it doesn't, then your
That's okay
journey goes
too.
somewhere else. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
okay too. Absolutely.
I'm a firm believer in that you don't truly fail at something until you stop trying. You know, my friends will describe me as the person who will pounce on any opportunity. I remember this is a little story, but me and my friends, we went to like an Indian restaurant, and they were all like, "Oh man, I ran out of water in my cup or whatever." My friends are all introverts, and they're all a little socially awkward. I love you guys still, but um, but I'm like not like that. So I'd be like, waiter, can we get some water, please?
Right.
And they're like, Fadlan, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But in my eyes, that solved the problem, bro. Like, I got somebody to help get you some water, you know? And no matter what somebody tells me that maybe I do talk too much, maybe I'm a little too direct, whatever, I'm never gonna not be an advocate of myself, Like, especially with music, I'm going up to everybody. I'm like, hey, man, I make cool stuff, I would love for you to check me out. I would love for you to tell me what you think about the stuff that you heard. And I think that's very important, to just stand up for yourself and just put yourself out there. That
Absolutely.
things have changed so much for me in such a positive way when I started to just go out there and just show people who I am. You'll never know who's going to fuck with you.
Yeah, you never. Yeah, truly. Yeah, you be very surprised sometimes.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Yeah, it is. It's really an incredible journey to be on.
It is. And to think that I'm like, the way I see it is like, I'm pretty much starting, Like, I have been making music for a while, but seriously, like, doing it and trying to get people to listen to me and all that, like, I'm new to this, man. Everything here is just amazing to me.
Yeah.
I'm so curious, and I just want to be able to cultivate relationships and just have a good time, because I think that's what it all comes down to, I wouldn't be doing any of this if I thought it was a chore or a burden or anything like that, I don't make money from this. Not really. That's why I'm in pharmacy school.
Right.
But I do this because I love this. I do this because this is my number one passion, dude. Like, nobody's forcing me to do any of this. Like, I just love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why we all do it. And it separates the ones who do it like for social media and the ones who do it because they truly love it and they're going to do it for life. It reminds me of that really, there's a really great like interview footage. I think it's James Brown. It's like, would you make music if no one ever listens? Of course.
Yeah.
But if no one heard it, why not?
Yeah.
Why make it? Because I love it.
Yeah.
And it's such a good. It's just so true. It's just like. I think that's a very outsider-like perspective. Like, you'd make music if no one listened to it? And it's like, absolutely. Some people, I have to.
It's my therapy.
Yeah, exactly. I work through, and a lot of artists I know make some songs just for themselves. Or they make it and they're like, this one's, they'll say it's like going in the vault, but it's like, no, this one's just a bit too personal, or I don't want to revisit this emotional place every night on stage. Like sometimes it's like, I battled some demons to get the song, and sometimes you don't want that demon on stage with you, and so you're like, I'm just gonna put that one away. That one was for me. That one's for me.
I have just pages and pages and pages of notes in my notes app of verses and poems and just spoken words of stuff that I don't ever really want to get out there. A lot of it is just because I need to deal with it myself, right?
Yeah. And we can use that, blueprint, all that prior writing to eventually shape something that we can articulate into something we are willing to share with our audience.
Man. That's what I love so much about music, I think there's two universal languages in this world. Food, I love food, and music, because I think you said it on like one of the episodes that I listened to, but you or Jordan Brooks, they were like, I can listen to a song that's not even in English, in like Spanish or some reggaeton or some, and like I can still vibe with it, you know? And I'm like, exactly, bro, because it's only music where you can just put on a song and people of like just different cultures, all that, they can just,
Not only pick up the vibe, but
yeah.
understand intimately what they were feeling or going through. Sometimes, even when you don't understand the language at all, it's just like the music itself tells a tale, and then the vocalist tells a tale in the way they speak. It's like you can tell immediately there's certain things that are evident at first,
And and the specific performance as well. How there's like a different vibe when you have like a studio recording versus like a live performance,
right?
you know?
And how it's very interesting how people sometimes misinterpret that. And it's what's really cool is when certain artists purposely make the song to be misinterpreted almost, or with expectations where it has like a false kind of like it wears a mask. It makes me think of Swimming Pools by Kendrick Lamar, where on its face it's like this is a party song, and it's really made to be a song that you play at a party, and it was the song that everybody played at the party as intended because of the way it is and its most, at face value. But as soon as you open the door and you start walking around and you're like, start looking at these lyrics and you're like, this is not what this is opposite of this, but that was what made that so clever. As soon as you just looked at it and shed some light on it, it's like, this is the opposite. This is anti-party alcohol culture. But it's the one that is the anthem of alcohol culture at the same time.
Yeah, it's because of crazy. I love that song.
I really believe he knew that would be how the song would be received, and so it's an interesting kind of dynamic between you and your audience when you have that, when you know your song's going to be misinterpreted to the point where you structure it with that in mind.
Another great example is "Hey Ya" by Outkast. It's a party song. You dance to it.
Yeah.
But it's about like a failing relationship, man.
Yeah.
And even 3 Stacks, he even says, "Y'all don't want to hear me. Y'all just want to dance." You know.
Yeah.
And all that. And I just thought that was like, dang,
Yeah. And so I think you can serve 2 audiences. You can have your song that people who want to dance, they're gonna dance. They will never listen to your lyrics, and that's fine.
That's cool.
But you made a song that they love. They love the song. So, they'll walk up to you and be like, "I love the song. I danced to it all night with my friend." It's like, "Oh yeah, did you like that really introspective part about my relationship in the past?" And you're like, "The what?" I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I just knew that I was, dancing and having a good time.
Yeah.
But somebody else would be like, "Oh, I thought the song was pretty cool, but your lyrics, man, like they really spoke to me. And, the song might not be my type, not really a dancey kind of guy, but your lyrics spoke to me." And so you can serve 2 audiences, and you'll get of course, the people who are like, "I was shaking ass and I was really diving deep into your lyrics.
I was shaking ass and crying at the same time.
Yeah,
bro.
exactly. and that'll be the person that's like the forever fan. That someone is like, I see you. I see what you're doing here. So.
That is something that I kind of want to like get into more, because like a lot of the music that I make is usually like slower tempo. It's not really like hype stuff. But I know like as I progress and grow as like an artist, I want to like dive into more sounds. I don't really want to make real depressing type shit all the damn time, bro. Yeah. I'm not like that all the time. I swear I'm not, dude. Do I take antidepressants? Yeah. But like, I like to like get down to some fucking Future sometimes, dude.
Yeah. I've struggled with how I want to present myself as an artist, because I know how good it feels to write like a breakup song, or like it feels so good to write a breakup song in the same way it feels so good to write a love song.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in it.
Yeah.
When you're in the middle of it. And I talked with Casey Powell before about how it, and I had kind of come up with this visual for like, sometimes it's not the best if you're on a boat and you're outside of the boat drowning. Sometimes it's hard to really trust yourself while you're in the middle of it to like write that song about drowning while drowning, because you're like really emotional about it and you're like thinking crazy stuff. And then you might put that song out, get back on the boat and be like, I can't believe I said that.
That's what I was referring to with like my older music.
Yeah.
I was like, I was drowning, and I was trying to like write while I was drowning. I'm like,
Right.
nah,
You
man,
need to be able to get on the boat,
get back on the shore, dude.
dry off, and think about what happened and recontextualize it in a way that you now, with your current state of mind, where things are less, you're able to look back at it because it has passed. You're able to, recontextualize it in a way that you think is more appropriate. But it feels good when you're drowning to write the songs like, this is terrible.
Yeah, it's cathartic.
Yeah, and because it's when the faucet is on, is during that time. It's hard to, and it can be painful to turn that faucet back on. It's okay, let's revisit this, oh my gosh. And then you get back into it when, so I totally agree.
Yeah, man. Hey, I'll make a Club Banger album sometime.
Yeah.
I swear.
Yeah, I've struggled, between wanting to make, I know truly in my heart, I want to make music that makes people happy and people turn to have a good time and to use as a form of escapism if they need to, where I find myself naturally, and I think just the way I write is more, I write sad songs and I write contemplative songs about like working through an issue, and it's never songs that are like really upbeat or happy or have a happy message.
I'm the same way,
but
man.
I'm so inspired by artists who can, like, oh my gosh, like Bruno Mars Silk Sonic
Dude.
album. That album made me want to, and it made me go to the gym like that. And I was like, I'm going to the gym today, and I did. And I was like, this album is, I mean, I want to do what that album did to me. I want to give people that. I think that is such a gift because, like, I think there's so many people out there who can deliver what I feel good or I feel most comfortable. I think I feel most comfortable writing a sad song. But I think because it is a challenge and because it gives more, like, a more unique gift that I think can be, it's not more precious or, better in any way because there's nothing like, I think it's equal importance to make people feel less alone in their rough situation and make them feel seen and make them understand they're not alone. And that, because we've all had that moment with an artist where we listen to them with like, you just spoke truth to what I'm going through. So thank you. But also being able to give positive affirmation to artists, to your audience, and just say, whatever you're going through, you're amazing, and we're going to figure this out, and you're going to be okay. That's really what I want to do, but it's hard to do that, and just like, and also do it with such flash, and the way to just and through just creating like really great music. I know that's what I'd like to do, but it's a hard kind of parallel there. Because you want to do one thing and you have two wolves inside you. Yeah. One wants to make sad songs, one wants to make happy songs.
I said that to my friend earlier this day, bro. But I think for me, it's difficult for me to write like positive. It's difficult for me to write something upbeat like that.
Yeah,
I guess.
Me too.
Because I think when I go more in the upbeat kind of route, I get like whatever the common hip hop tropes are, like braggadocio, things like that, and like that's not really who I am, And then I look back at it, I'm like, I don't want to put this out, dude. This isn't who I am, But I like to think of the dichotomy between what I write and how I am in real life. So what I write is really introspective. It's usually pretty dense once you really get to reading it, But who I am in person, bro, I joke all the time. I'm a jokester. People, bro, I tell dad jokes all the time. I don't have a kid. But, like, I'll make these, like, stupid, like, wordplay things. Like, earlier today, my friends and I, we went to Tumbleweed. And, I don't know, I think one of my friends was like, oh, you don't look right or something. But then I was like, oh, but did I look left? And then...
Oh, my God.
And both of them just had a collective sigh. But, I love stuff like that, Because, like, I think you got to have a balance, right?
Yeah.
I got a little bracelet here with yin and yang on it. And, like, I believe in that kind of philosophy that like in order to have really, really happy moments in your life, you gotta know what it's like to be sad, or else what are you gonna compare that to?
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
know, I
As-
forgot who said that.
Yin
but-
and yang is about chaos and order. And you
Exactly,
can't have order
right?
without chaos because there
Exactly.
is without one, the other can't exist. And the fine line between order and chaos is like where we tread
Yeah,
as on that line between.
yeah, right. So I don't believe in always just being sad all the time because that's not how people are. People have happy moments. People go to New Year's Eve parties,
Yeah,
stuff like
absolutely.
that. But we also have some times where we fall, bro.
Yeah.
It's I don't know why I'm thinking about like it's because I'm just in pharmacy school and we were just talking about like pH level in the blood or something. Homeostasis. Yeah. There's like a central average point that you kind of want the blood to be at. But that's not how it is. The blood pH level fluctuates. Sometimes it's a little more basic, sometimes a little more acidic. And that's how I perceive humanity, right? Sometimes we're more sad, sometimes we're more happy, sometimes we're anxious, sometimes we're afraid, sometimes we're angry, sometimes we're disgusted, inside out, you know what I mean? Things like that. But ultimately, it's all about finding an equilibrium, finding a balance with all of it, not having too much in excess or too much in deficiency.
And the equilibrium will happen whether you like it or not.
Yeah, man.
It's how nature functions.
That's how nature works.
Nature cannot, nature is so much order, but is also so much chaos. And
Entropy, man.
That's how it is able to function. And so whether you find the order or not, it's there. Or whether you find like the balance or not, it's there. It's just, you might have a pH imbalance, if you have the certain ideology about your life, pH balance of the mind.
You might need a girder, anti-ulcerative.
Right. You lost me on that one.
Is pharmacy school.
They just dropped somebody's gonna be like,
somebody's gonna get that, okay?
They'll be like,
Pantoprazole, omeprazole.
Someone's be like, I see
I
you.
hate it here.
Well, Fadlan, it's been incredible talking with you. Who Counts Your Sins on Judgment Day is out on all streaming services.
Check me out, man. I promise I won't disappoint.
But it was enjoy talking to you.
Yeah,
really appreciate you taking the time to be here, man.
Absolutely. Thank you for speaking to me, man.
Of course. Yeah. Hopefully we'll hear more music from you very soon.